So, welcome to Ideas in Action. I think this is edition number 3 for New York City, right? So let me talk to you a little bit about this plan for this year. So, the theme for these 5 weekends that we're going to spend together is the use of the arms and developing dexterity. So, the use of the arms is what we usually say, and I like that idea of that as a subject because so much of what makes us human is how we use our arms. I mean, it's so central to what we do in the world. It's also central to what we do in our work. So there is you could say, a self-reflective aspect of this, because we'll also look at our own use of our arms as we're working with other people. Okay? I put developing dexterity in there too, because I think when you're talking about dexterity, it's kind of the opposite of rehabilitation. It's the opposite of getting out of the hole, and it's kind of, climbing towards the summit, aspiring to the best that we could be. So I think that part of understanding how human beings move, whether they have problems or challenges or disabilities or whatever, or not, has to do with understanding what we do when we move as well as we can, when we do the best that we can. So I wanted to put the idea of dexterity in there for that reason, and also because I'd like to think about this not just as a remedial approach. Right? Feldenkrais isn't just about fixing problems, but it's also about developing our abilities to their best possible level. And so that's where that idea came from. And also I like the idea of dexterity because though it's related to the hands, right? It has to do with the whole person, I think. But we'll see how that develops as we go. The framework for when we're together, it really, let's see, I'm trying to figure out how to tell this story. So I was talking to someone, who shall remain nameless for the moment, who was describing somebody else watching me teach. Right? So a little bit of secondhand information here, but it was kind of interesting. So this person said to me that, I'd given a talk about giving a lesson, and I was in the middle of giving a lesson, and then all of a sudden I had to, I can't remember exactly how they said this, but let go of the conceptual aspect and tune into what I was feeling. And for them it was like a victory. Right? Like, all those ideas, you could kind of shove them out of the way, because when it came right down to it, I just had to pay attention to my sensation. And I walked away from this conversation, which was very casual, something that happened at a conference last summer, and friendly, and I walked away, and I was bothered about this for weeks. Right? And I was just, I wanted to say something back to this person. I didn't know what to say, and I really struggled. And what I realized is that it's pointed out to me that there is still this dichotomy between thinking and feeling. Right? It's like, you can think, but that's not really the work, because when you're really doing it, you're just sensing. And I'd say that that's a duality that I'd like to avoid. So instead of dualities, I vote for no dualities. Oh shit, that's another duality. I guess I have to be a Zen monk to get out of it. No, but the thing is that I think that rather than having an either-or choice between thinking or feeling, or between thinking, feeling, or sensing, if we're going to be Feldenkrais teachers, or thinking, feeling, sensing, and acting, and I think we can look at how these things work together. Okay? I don't think, and I don't believe that there's an opposition between sensing on the one hand and thinking on the other. And so I want to keep that in mind as we progress. I would say that what this course is about is pedagogical reasoning. All right, I use the word reasoning because in reasoning I would like to include thinking, feeling, and sensing. Because I think that we can reason, we can make distinctions and problem solve and be creative and imaginative, communicate in all of those domains. And what I mean by pedagogical reasoning is I mean the processes that underlie how we as teachers make lessons. for our students, right? What are the processes behind that? What do we rely on when we're making a lesson? Some of that is strategical thinking, or strategic thinking, you know, thinking about how to put a lesson together, how to invite someone to participate in it, thinking about what's worth learning, what does the person need to learn, and how can we help them? And then how do we put a lesson together that fits for this person, fits their learning style, fits their needs, helps them ask questions that they have, helps them move forward with the process that we're engaged in with them. Part of that has to do with technique. And those of you who've been here with me before have heard the following before. I love technique, I love technique, I love technique. And I love technique not for the sake of technique. Okay, I love technique because when you have developed some technical proficiency, then a lot of what we call technique disappears. It becomes what we call second nature. It becomes something that is, if you'll pardon the pun, at our fingertips, without thinking about it. I think that's really important because I think that during a lesson, I think it's a waste of valuable resources to have your brain going, now where do I put my hands? What do I do with them? Right? I think that should be kind of built in, that you should practice the technique enough so that it really is just there. You know where to put your hands without thinking about it. It doesn't mean that there aren't times that you won't think about it, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't make up new techniques. But it does mean in the course of giving lessons that, well, I think that your intention, when you're giving a lesson, where do you want your attention? You want your attention on the student's experience and on your self-use. I think those are the two things that we want to pay attention to during the lesson. So anything that happens that interferes with those, with thinking about how you're implicated in what's going on and how you're using yourself and how you're speaking and moving and touching the person, and thinking about the experience you want to create for them, what they're noticing, what they're missing, and how you're going to guide their experience so they can have something we call learning happen. I think that's where your attention will run. So we will talk about technique and we'll practice technique, just because I think it's something that you just want to have in your back pocket. Also, built into technique is a whole, you could say the whole philosophy of the method is built into every technical approach that we have, every technique that we use. In other words, techniques talk about the structure of the body. Techniques relate to the biomechanics of movement, both mine or yours and the students, right? Techniques also have to do with touching someone in a certain place, in a certain way, so as to clearly communicate, as to clearly elicit a very specific experience. The thing that surprises me, really surprises me, is that in the course of teaching advanced trainings and doing mentoring and doing supervision, I had the experience over and over again that people are surprised, people meaning us, practitioners, teachers, are surprised and delighted that the method works. Now I think as a student, that's a really relevant experience. You know, when I get up off the floor doing an ATM, I'm like, wow, this is cool, right? And there's a kind of surprise, even though I know what's going to happen, just on the consumers end of it, you know, the students end of it. It's a really vibrant and exciting experience. I'm a little disturbed though when people have that experience as practitioners. Not when they're receiving a lesson or participating in an ATM, but when they're giving a lesson or when they're observing somebody else give a lesson. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a method. We count on it working. We shouldn't be delighted. I mean, we could be delighted that it works, but we should be surprised that it works. We should expect it to work. Not all the time, not arrogantly, but there should be that, you know, a trust in the method. When I go to give a lesson, I never think of it as a test. Right? It's not about whether the method's going to work or whether I can do it or not. It certainly is about whether this is the right thing for this person, and it may not be. But once we figure that out, I'm in a place where, you know, where if I was in in a kind of a religious bent, or this was a different situation, I think I would use the word faith. I have faith in the method, and I rely on it. So one of the reasons for talking about technique and learning technique is not just so I tell you to do it and you do it because I tell you to, but so that we can investigate the how and why underneath the technique. Why do you put your hands this way? How come we're built that it gives this kind of experience? What experience are we looking for here? Because I think the more you understand that, and I don't mean in your head, I mean in your heart and in your bones, the more you understand that, the more you will rely on the method. The more you rely on the method, the less time you'll spend being nervous and the more time you'll spend paying attention to the person. And I think that's also really important. So we're going to explore technique, and we're going to explore the pedagogical aspect of what I'm after these days. What I really think about is that what we want to do, each in our own way, using our life experience, our own personal. I love this phrase. What's her name? Somebody on Feldenkrais Forum uses it. Can't think of her name at the moment, but our own personal genius, right? Our own intuition. But all of those things, we want to do those kind of using the same kind of reasoning that Moshe used. What is a Feldenkraisian way of approaching this particular person and this particular moment? That's what I mean by clinical reasoning. Last summer at the conference, I taught a workshop called What Was He Thinking? And that's kind of what I'm after. I mean, I think the purpose of training, of becoming Feldenkrais practitioners and of becoming better Feldenkrais teachers is to be able to kind of step into his shoes and to follow this kind of reasoning. Not to mimic it. Okay? Because if we mimic it, then we're just reproducing something that happened in the past. And Moshe was somebody who couldn't ever repeat himself, so I don't think that that's particularly Feldenkraisian. I mean, understanding the ideas and the notions and all of the things that the perceptions, everything that the method is based on, well enough so we can kind of step into the process and follow the percepts of this way of approaching other people. So to that end, I'm much less interested in demonstrating lessons than I am in creating places where we could be lessening. Not with an EN but an ON, like making lessons, turning that into a verb. I think the question isn't what is Feldenkrais? Because the thing is, it's such a, when you try to answer the question, what is Feldenkrais, you end up with a definitive answer. Feldenkrais is, and we get in trouble anytime we try to kind of back it into a corner. So I'm more after spending this time we have together answering the question of when is Feldenkrais? When is Feldenkrais happening? When is Feldenkraising happening? When is learning and teaching in the Feldenkrais way happening? What are the hallmarks of that? So I don't think that can be copied. I think that my job here is to create situations where you're invited to participate with your thinking, with your emotions, with your sensory perception, with the way you speak and with the way you touch, into this process of making a learning situation occur, creating an environment for learning. And so what this course is after is this idea of pedagogical reasoning. So this is what I meant in the PR when I was talking about composition. How do you put a lesson together? What is the structure of a lesson? So we are going to study some lesson structures, like specific structures, and we're also going to study lesson strategies, ways of approaching a situation. In these 2 days that we're going to spend together, one of the ideas that I want to make clear, I'm going to tell you ahead of time, is that in order to see what's happening with somebody, you have to be able, or in order to understand, to feel, to see what's happening with somebody, you have to be able to understand, to see, to feel what someone would do if they were doing it in the best possible way. And that's part of what we're going to talk about these next few days.